And now I want to proceed to the next segment, and this is my truth litmus test. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about the language truth code and the Russian truth code. Here I will tell you what the word race means, for example, what it really does mean. In Russian, this word is pronounced rasa. Rasa. Then we will also talk about who is Ra. Ra. What does it mean? Who are really Aryans? What is really Rus? Rus. What does the word Rus mean? How it later became Россия. Then it became Россия, and then Russia in English. So we have Rus, Россия, Россия, and Russia. What is Mother Russia, and who are really Slavs? All this I want to discuss in this segment. You heard me talk a lot about the language truth code, the Russian truth code previously. Again, refer to my articles, please. So I'm not going to repeat much of what I said previously. I want to give you new information. And so we're going to begin with the word race. It's in English. In Russian, rasa. And now look at this. Ra, okay? Ra. What is Ra? Everybody knows what Ra is. That's the son of God, and that's Egyptian, supposedly, son of God, right? We are seeing the picture right on the screen. This is what Egyptians, or those people we think were Egyptians, what they depicted Ra as. But this word actually exists in many, many languages as a key, not a full word, but as a key segment of any word, as a building block, as a syllable of various words, and I will prove it to you. Look at my last name, Ray. What do you see? Ra and then Y, right? Well, Ray, obviously, the ray of light, right? Of sun. Sun has rays, right? Now look at the word race, or in Russian, even better yet, rasa. Ra-sa. What do you see? Same Ra, right? And then the last syllable, the second syllable is sa, but it's actually not sa. It's asa. So it's Ra and then asa becomes rasa. And in English, race is also pretty telling. And look at this. Ra and then si. No, it's Ra and then two A's merged together because the second one is ace. Ra, ace, okay? What do you see here? What is ace? Somebody who's excellent, superb at what he does. For example, flying aces, those pilots who are really, really excellent pilots, right? They're called aces. Or we have an ace in the cards, right? That's the highest card. The card that can beat them all. You've got an ace, right? We know this expression. So asa in Russian and ace, okay, same word. And now look at the word Asia. 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 What does it tell us? Incidentally, all these words in any languages, Asia is a broken from Asia. Asia in Russian, or Asia. Asia, Asia. And when it ends on ya, Russian ya, like Britannia, Britain, Россия, Russia, that last ya in Russian means I, me, myself. So what does it tell us? Россия, Russia and I. Asia or Asia, Asia and I. Britannia, Britain and I. Швеция, Sweden, Sweden and I. Germania, Germany and I. Then when languages started being mutilated and they started growing out of their roots, what happened was they started chopping them off, chopping off the ending. So it became Germany. Say it was Germania, suddenly it's Germany. Where is your ya? So you are not part of it anymore. People are separate now from their country, from their unity, from their tribe. This is how that ego started developing. Interesting, right? You will see this everywhere, and I might return to this later. So we're still on race, Ra. To just mention Asia, the word Asia or Asia was the land of aces, where aces lived. And who were aces? Those who aced everything, those who were the masters, in fact, the land of the masters. And I will give you a peek into one of the future webinars we will discuss in this series. Asia, what is today Eurasia, that's what in the ancient days, Europe and Asia was Asia, all of it. The land of aces, the land of masters, masters of their world, self-mastery, that's what was meant by that. So when we say rasa or race, Ra, light, sun, right? And ace, master, us, ace, okay? So this is the race, in fact, means people who are masters of the light. That's what race actually means. Nothing like when we say racism, that's calling something that is beautiful and nice. We have made, as humans, we have managed to poop on it so badly that it becomes such a bad word. And you will see me mention that in the future, how humans have taken the beautiful symbol or beautiful word and made it into something completely horrific. Totally horrifying. So this is one of such examples. People who are masters of the light. Hello, in other words, enlightened people. That's what rasa means. And what it referred to initially, it referred specifically to, ready for this, to Russians. And now look at these words, Rus. Incidentally, I mentioned that previously in previous articles and my previous teachings, vowels such as u, a, o, they're interchangeable. They o, a, u can become either of them at any given moment.
Like the symbol swastika?
Yes, swastika. That's a very good example. And thank you for mentioning that, because we will be talking about it in the very next segment of this webinar. I promise I'll mention that as well. We'll see how much time we have for this, but swastika is a very interesting example. Exactly what I mean when I say humans manage to take something beautiful and positive and turn it into some kind of ugly, negative, and menacing. You're seeing swastika on the screen, but I will mention that for sure. So going back to race, to Russia, etc., you see what is happening here when we, even though we spell Russia with the U in English, but we say Russia, not Russia, right? Or Yusha, we say Russia. In Russian, the ancient way of spelling it was Rus. Remember I told you it's pronounced very softly, Rus. Ancient Rus. In English, it sounds as Rus because there is no soft syllable in English. But then it started being pronounced as Россия, Россия. Again, that same Ra. See, you see these words on the screen right now. Россия, Russia and I. And then it became Россия with an O and two S's. See, Россия had one S. Then and had an A. Then Россия already has O in it, but we still say in Russian, we still say Россия. We never say Россия. Only in certain small areas of Russia they emphasize O, but that's special accents that we have in certain areas of Russia. But in the majority of Russia, and literary Russian language implies that you always say Россия, Россия, and even Russia in English. Only Russia, say in Italian or Spanish, will be with the U because they say it as they hear it. Okay, but so U like Rus or Russia, A like Россия or O like Россия are all interchangeable. It is still the same Ra. So what is Russia in other words? It starts with Ra, which is light, okay? And then there's an interesting thing that I will point out to you. And that's going to be a little bit later, because I want to now focus on what happened after settlers from Orion arrived to Midgard Gaia and started settling in. And what they did, they settled in Hyperborea, or in other words, Arctic Rus. And at first it was not called Arctic Rus at all. It had different names. At some point, they became known as Aryans. And I will let you know later what Aryans actually in fact means. Again, a beautiful word, a very, very ancient word, was later made into this ugly word by German Nazis. But there was nothing ugly about it to begin with. You know, I will mention this now and probably later as well. Keep in mind that German Nazis, in fact, researched and investigated things like Aryans, what that meant, all these Orion truths, swastika, and all these ancient symbols and ancient origins. They investigated them very, very deeply. They had whole institutes dedicated to that. And this is why they actually knew what, in fact, they kept digging in the Arctic, beyond the Arctic Circle, trying to find Hyperborea. They tried to establish a base in Antarctica, of which we will talk in one of the future webinars. They looked everywhere for traces of that amazing Aryan civilization of which they thought they descended. What they did not realize was, again, we will talk about that in the future webinars, is that, of course, they descended just like many, many others from the same root, from the same Orion seeding of the Earth, number one, Midgard Gaia, Hyperborea, and Arctic Rus. They were once Russians, except they so forgot about it. They so turned into this aggressive yang mode that they forgot their roots completely. And it happened to many, many people on the planet. So setting aside German Nazis right now, we are going back to where we started. We have the seeding, and then the settlers settle in this flourishing, beautiful land called Hyperborea. And you know the expression Aurora Borealis, you know, this Western lights, this beautiful, mysterious, mystical Northern lights. I'm sorry, not Western lights, Northern lights. Borealis, Borea, right? Hyperborea, Hyperborea, Borealis. There you go. That's where it comes from. So when the civilization settled, they started developing. It was beautiful. They started building up. They started manifesting with their amazing creativity that humans possess in 3D. Consciousness was still on 5D level. Everybody remembered their roots. They basically worshipped their gods. But there was an interesting thing in Vedic. Again, remember what Vedism means? That means knowledge. Veda. Veda means Ve, this root, this syllable, means at the same time to see and to know, you know? And then also it may mean to arrive, to come into knowledge, to come into seeing something. Well, that's a very all-encompassing small syllable that actually packs so much information in it. Ve or vi. That's in Russian, but you will see resonance of it in different languages, such as, here's Latin, veni, vidi, vici, and we'll talk about it later. And da, well, everybody knows what da is. That's yes in Russian. Yes, I see. That's what veda means. Vedаю. I do know, okay? That's a verb. I am knowing. That Vedic truth and Vedic lifestyle developed there, and it was very beautiful. And as you're looking at these pictures of Hyperborea, these renditions by Vsevolod Ivanov, that's a Russian painter who paints all this from his Vedic memory. He's a Vedic painter, contemporary Vedic painter, in fact, who knows that history was screwed up, rewritten, that it's completely falsified. And so all this develops But together with it, as humans begin spreading out further and further, colonizing new areas, new lands, and at the time, remember, North Pole and Arctic areas of the planet, they're in fact highly inhabitable. They are flourishing. There's tons and tons going on there, vegetation, animals. Look at these mammoths that I'm showing in these pictures. What happens then? As humans begin spreading wider and wider away from that center in which they settled, away from the center where the original ancestor wisdom is being held, where the knowledge and memory of their roots is held, where those Orion roots are still remembered, where Vedic knowledge is focused and concentrated, they start expanding further and further. And what happens is that they start forgetting little by little. At the very same time, human ego, human fear and greed start taking hold. And it's small things at first. Memory fades, and then new generations are born. More and more people appear, and they seed and spread more and more and more, further and further. And as they were walking away from the center, as more generations were born and started settling further and further out, they started forgetting. So with that, their consciousness slowly but surely started descending a little bit. But see, then karma appears. Karma is a vicious cycle. Once it appears, it just like takes hold. And karmic mechanism was always a learning mechanism. Let's not see it negatively. Let's see it higher dimensionally. It's a learning mechanism. You learn your lesson. You have squared off your debt, you could call it, or lesson. You learn your lesson, you proceed to the next grade. And then the next grade, just remember what I told you. Earth is a school. Earth is a grade school. When you graduate from grade school, you actually go to college, and then you go to graduate studies, and then you become a teacher after that. So you graduate to different realms, to different dimensions of existence. But here, 3D Earth, Midgard Earth, is also the school. It's a grade school, okay? And that's what people are supposed to do. They were learning, but karmic debt was becoming higher and higher. It was piling up like a mountain, deeper and deeper, dragging you down more and more from 5D consciousness, then 4D consciousness, then 3D consciousness. That happened very gradually over a very, very long period of time. And initially it was imperceptible. Yet something started happening on the planet. And about that, I will tell you in the next segment of this webinar. We will discuss how karma actually works, how comet of karma, ice age, great flood, pole shift, climate change, all these are mechanisms of karma and the evolution or devolution, if you will, of human existence, human experience, and human consciousness on the planet. And that's how this holographic multidimensional world has been composed. That's how it was built. It was built on building blocks. One of them is that karma and various mechanisms of resetting, but it was also built on creativity. It was also built on spirit and matter interfaces, mind, emotions, many, many interesting things. And about all that, I will tell you in the next segment. But in this segment, we are still discussing the litmus tests for truth and truth codes that I usually teach about. And so I started telling you about how people started spreading around the world. And there is no way of mentioning that without reminding you also that eventually Ice Age began. Well, as I said, we'll talk about it in the next segment, but it's all interconnected. So Ice Age, first, ice started encroaching. Snow caps started developing, and suddenly snow fell where everything was flourishing, and it was eternal spring, eternal paradise. In fact, something started changing. Why it started changing, that's next segment. But now just imagine, suddenly people have to dress a lot warmer. Suddenly they're freezing when they never were before. And suddenly they discover that they cannot live there anymore because ices and snows are encroaching on them. And so there was mass migration from the flourishing Hyperborea. And again, you're seeing the mammoths. Mammoths were used in those days. That's according to Vsevolod Ivanov rendition. But yes, because so many mammoths were found buried in ice, around Arctic Circle and beyond, they were used, and they actually lived, many of them lived there at the time, whole herds, and they were used as domesticated animals as for hauling things. And so people start moving out, and they start moving further south as the poles shift and climates change. So what was cold before, which was near the equator, and incidentally Western Europe was covered with ices, and ices that were several kilometers tall, in fact. Glaciers, right? And so people start moving both west and south. Eventually there will be Mesopotamia, there will be Atlantis, and there will be Egypt. Well, Atlantis probably first. There will be India. That's where people were moving. South, India in Asia, and I'm talking the Hyperborean people. So India gets populated by Vedics, who bring their Vedic culture there, hence Hindu Vedas. That's part of our knowledge. That's something that is preserved, because Russian Vedic knowledge was destroyed. Books were destroyed. Holders of Vedic knowledge in both Western Europe and Russia were executed oftentimes, but especially in Western Europe, these executions of witches, burnings of witches, of various knights who held certain knowledge from ancient days. They might even forget that it's Vedic knowledge, but they still possessed it. They still hung on to it, even if they forgot what it was called. All the wizards of old, all this, they were eliminated, but a lot of it is survived in the Vedas, was actually meticulously preserved in India. So we still have a slightly distorted knowledge, but a lot of it was written and rewritten and re-recorded later from memory, but a lot of it still is true. Like, for example, in Hindu Vedas, you will find mentions of animals that do not exist and never existed in India, but would exist in northern climates, such as in northern Russia. And also the description of plants that also would exist in northern Russia, but certainly never would exist in India, and landscapes and certain views like fields, grasses that also talk about northern Russia, even though they don't call it that. And so all this is recorded in Hindu Vedas. So humans begin spreading and finding places that resemble the environment that they lived in so happily in Hyperborea. So something warm, something where they can have good agriculture, promising land. They're looking for promised land, in other words. All these biblical stories, they hearken to that, looking for promised land and being expelled from paradise. That is what happened. As I said, it ties into ego, the growth of ego, the growth of fear-based and greed-based egoic nature, which is connected to the emotional body and mind body of humans. And so as humans spread, the word appeared. I already told you this word, Россия. And now I will explain to you what Россия means, spelled like this, Raseya. This is not the contemporary spelling of Россия or Russia, right? Россия meant, and again, look at this, rasa or race, Ra, and then as, as in ace or Asia, right? And then ya means I. So I am the person or part of this culture of aces of light or masters of light. Later, this word acquired a different meaning, and that's a very interesting meaning that actually it has today in contemporary Russian language. That never changed. Рассеивать, that's a verb. In Russian means to spread out. For example, we say the light рассеивается, свет рассеивается, means that the light is spreading out. So to spread out, Россия, the meaning was not initial meaning that these are the people of the light and I'm one of them. It actually came to mean people who are spreading out, or light is spreading out. That's another way. So that's the initial meaning of the word Russia or Россия, okay? People of the light and light that is spreading out all over the globe. And now look at the territory of Russia on the map and tell me that it's not spread out, okay? So the meaning is right there, okay? Light spreading out, people who are masters of their world, of their destiny, of self-mastery, and very spread out, okay? These are the meanings. Now we have come to the meaning for Aryans. And see, look at this, R and Ra. If you reverse Ra, you get R. Aryan. Okay, An means yang. Basically, something that is active. You know, we say yang west, right? Yin yang. So this is yang. R is the opposite of Ra. Why is it the opposite of Ra? So Ra is light or sun or something cosmos, that divine cosmos, divine sun. So R, because when you reverse it, what do you have? You have earth. That is above, this is below, okay? So these are the people who lived on the earth and worked the earth. What they did, this is very ingenious. Some of the words in the ancient days, or some of the syllables would be just reversed. Ra becomes R, and that indicates that Ra is above and we are below. We are under, we are related, we are one and the same, except we are here and Ra is there. Okay? So Aryans and An, that's a yang, assertive kind of beginning. R, E, An. E in Russian means end. R, on land and assertive. On land, living on land and working the land. Eventually, it would come to mean that these are people who work the land. Look at these pictures, they're like farmers. These are Russian farmers. Soviet paintings of Russian farmers I'm showing you right now. Farmland, people who work the land, work with their hands, who are actively involved in cultivating the land. That's what Aryan came to mean later. That was the positive, real deal meaning. And then German fascists come along and again poop up this word. They spoil it, they degrade it, they make it into something very dark, just like the swastika. And also want to show you, since we discussed swastika, here's how that works. See what I'm showing you, these pictures? This is the ancient example of an ancient Russian embroidery. Look at the swastikas throughout. This famous embroidery from Vologda, one of the ancient Russian towns famous for its ingenious, absolutely beautiful embroideries, historic embroideries. Look at this, another example. And here is a men's shirt, and on it you also see this kind of embroidery. And now I'm going to show you several pictures as we're talking about this. I'll show you several pictures of swastikas as they are used in India, in Tibet. In China, you will also see them with food dogs. You may not see it on the picture I'll show you of food dogs, but actually food dogs, under food dogs, which are the guardians, swastikas are used continuously.
So what is the original meaning of swastika?
The original meaning is very simple. Actually, there are many types of swastikas, and you will also see a picture of various types of swastikas as we go along. The original meaning is actually twofold. Some types of swastika were the depictions of the sun. And some types of swastikas, and you see there are different types of them, some types of swastika actually depict our galaxy or our even universe with multiple galaxies in it or multiple worlds in it. Okay, so depends on how there are different types and they had slightly different meanings. But basically all swastikas depict our place as human civilization and planet Earth, Midgard Gaia, in the universe, in our big universe, like being one with the universe. That was the original meaning. And again, as you see these embroideries that I showed you, and now you're seeing Tibetan temple, Hindu temple. As I said, in China, I've seen it with guardians of the gate, Fu dogs. At the pedestal, they paint them Buddha, depicted with swastika. There is this swastika inside the what we call the Star of David, or six-pointed star, which is six-pointed star, what we know as a Star of David, or the Jewish symbol, is certainly not a Jewish symbol. It is so much more ancient. It's one of the originals. It actually is very popular in Tibet as well, and oftentimes Tibetan tangas and mandalas are painted with multi-layered, which depicts multi-dimensional universe. Star of David, for lack of a better word. In other words, two triangles, one pointing out, another pointing down, and two triangles interconnected, one pointing down, another pointing up, signify yin-yang. That's what that signifies. The universe, that's the same as the yin-yang cone, this circle of yin and yang, black and white halves. So Star of David, incorrect name, of course, but we know it by this name, signifies the same exact thing, except when there are multiples of that, they signify multidimensional universe. It's very normal for tangas in mandalas to have that kind of or similar depiction.
It's also interesting that the Nazi swastika is inversed or reversed. So they take the image and they change the whole meaning of it.
Well, yes, you could say it that way. It is not reversed because, as I said, there are many types of swastikas. And again, look at this picture. And the thing is that it's not reversed. That's actually incorrect interpretation. It may seem reversed if you think that it has to always veer to the left, spin to the left, but it does not always spin counterclockwise. It can spin also clockwise, depending on the rendition, on artist's vision, and on the type of swastika. Spinning to the left, that is the depiction of the galaxy. Spinning to the right, I would say that that's depiction of the sun. So, as I said before, German Nazis were in fact very privy to this knowledge, but they used it for evil. They used it, just because they were privy of knowledge does not justify them and does not make them into good guys. Because you can take the same, because these are all tools. See, they're neutral tools. It is how we use them, how we approach them, what's behind, what energy we put behind our usage of any tool. That's what tells us whether it's good or evil, whether this is somebody who is ascending or descending in consciousness, etc. Because, nothing is static in life. And they may start from a point in which they were genuinely interested in finding out their roots, which nothing is wrong with that. And they ended up being mass murderers. They ended up betraying everything and anything not only Vedic culture ever stood for, because initially it stood for true knowledge and freedom. Knowledge is freedom, or freedom is knowledge. It goes both ways. So each person was in fact a sovereign master of one's destiny. That's the Vedic view. You are a sovereign master of your destiny. You make all of your choices. This is what, in part, the experience on Earth, on Midgard Gaia is for. That's why people settled here. That's why Gaia keeps being seeded, because we need to explore this side, how we can become sovereign masters of our world, our destiny. But at the same time, we have to be a part of the whole. And not just intrinsic part of the whole, a harmonious part of the whole, working together. That's 5D consciousness and above. Above, we go even further than that. We actually build systems. And after that, we do a lot more. We teach humans or any other civilization. We help, we save, we upgrade We work on expanding and building worlds. That's what we do in higher dimensions. But in fifth dimension, we work cooperatively. We learn how to work together. Oneness happens even further out, like in higher dimensions. So humans started forgetting this. The more they lived, the more generations were born, generation after generation, they were forgetting it. And so these biblical stories of the Holy Grail, of the lost Holy Grail that needs to be found, this lost paradise, expulsion from the paradise, Tower of Babel, people spoke one language. I just showed you English examples, Spanish, Italian examples, and Russian examples, and even Hindu examples a little bit, like Vedic. People initially spoke the same language, and we call it Russian language. Well, you may call it something else. Bottom line, we only have one label for it. People didn't speak a language that was Aryan or Hyperborean. Well, we know it as Russian language, what today is known as Russian language. I will be proving it to you as we go along. Russian language is the key, as Hindu Vedas are the key too, because they're the best preserved document. Although I have to say that Russian Vedas have been uncovered. They have been saved, in fact, and they contain their own books. So Vedas, apparently, when humans were moving south, each tribe, as they were separating and going in their separate directions, when the great movement, Россия, occurred, when they started spreading out and running away from the encroaching glaciers, as they were doing that, each tribe got their piece of knowledge. This is actually very beautiful in my opinion, but also very, very important to understand. So each tribe, so those who went to India got their piece of knowledge. So that's Hindu Vedas. Russians got their piece of knowledge, and a lot of it is preserved genetically in Russian memory, in Russian language. A lot of what, because there are so many attacks against Russian everything, including, I'll tell you in future webinars how that happened, but Western agents were coming into Russia and just burning books and killing people who were privy of Vedic knowledge and trying to exterminate anything, any mention. Of course, in Western Europe, witch hunts, that's what that was about. Killing of Vedics, that's what it was about. Exterminating any memory, any knowledge, any wisdom that people still preserved and tried to pass on to future generations. That's what it was about. And of course, the church, especially Catholic Church, especially Vatican, but also Orthodox Christianity also is to blame, and Russian czars are to blame, and we will also mention that later as well. So we either can blame practically everybody, or we can just dispense with blame and just understand that all these things are interconnected. As human consciousness continued plunging down, and I said at some point consciousness went through the bottom, through 3D bottom, and went into 2D and even 1D. What do you expect? Of course they would be killing off carriers of knowledge and truth under such circumstances. Consciousness was that low. We call that dark ages, we call that medieval times, and we will also be discussing the lost 1,000 years of history. So history was lengthened for the West and dramatically shortened and mutilated for Russia. That's another thing, okay? So that's what happened here. Eventually, Россия was shortened and double S was added, which is a Western way of spelling it, and it became Россия. And we pronounce it still as Россия, not Россия. And of course, in English, it's Russia. Russia in Spanish or Italian. And now let's discuss this very interesting thing. What is Mother Russia? After everything I told you about, do you know what Mother Russia means? Does that ring a bell now? Why do people in the West oftentimes even refer to Russia as Mother Russia? Well, people use this expression and they don't think anything of it, right? Sometimes you say, oh, Mother Russia, right? And, they know this expression. They seem to understand this expression, but they don't think why it is so. like we call US Uncle Sam, for example, right? And this is suddenly Mother Russia. But why? What is the reason for that? You probably can see already from everything that I told you. It's very simple. It all came from Russia. That's why it's Mother. Midgard, Gaia, Hyperborea. Also, we could call it the land of the ancient Scyths or Scythians, as we know them today in English. The correct name is Scyths, not Scythians. That's Latinized. So Mother Russia is because everything came from there. It started from there. That's where the Orion seating of the Earth, Midgard, Gaia, has occurred from Russia. It's Mother because it contains that ultimate knowledge. It actually preserved it. From there on, Россия began. The people started spreading all over the planets. Okay? And when I talk about Russia and say Mother Russia, we do not mean Moscow. Moscow is the contemporary power center, and it's a huge power center. This is one of those portals that was at one point activated. That activation happened actually later, much later. It was not the original portal. There are major portals in the Arctic which were sealed after Arctic was covered with ices. And to close this section, I want to tell you about the Slavs. This word is just as interesting, as telling as Russia and everything we discussed. After I tell you about the Slavs, we will recap because there are so many interesting parts here that actually need to be remembered very well. So what does the word Slav means? Or is it the same as slave? Is it the same word? Or is it somehow related to it? I can tell you that Slav has so many words confirming its meaning in English even. One of them is the word love. Love, English word love. So Slav means s, it's Russian for with. And then we have la. Remember in my post about Goddess Lada and the Russian Truth Code, what did I say la means? La, in very ancient days, in those syllable building days, when humans used a single syllable for huge number of multiple meanings and then built up on that, they built words together, compiling them together. La is like when we sing, we go la 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 la. That's another symbol of joy, like la 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 la, right? I'm joyful, I'm feeling good, so I'm singing that. But la also is the symbol for a male organ, in fact. And in the ancient days, reproductive organ was something that was precious. That's how, in fact, humans actually gave birth, expressed their creativity, gave birth to more generations so that the civilization could thrive, could flourish. So it was absolutely invaluable. It's not like, oh my gosh, don't talk to me about male organ. It's not about sex. It is not about, let's just say, it's not about anything dirty, say. It is actually something that was perceived as very prized and beautiful in those ancient days. So with la, and here's va, is because in full word, would be not Slav, but Slava. Slava. Slava in Russian means basically glory, but this is a very rudimentary translation. I think that any Slav from any Slavic country, be it being Czech, Slovak, Croatian, Serb, Slovenian, let's just say Pole, or Russian, obviously Ukrainian or Belarusian, would understand what Slava means very well. Slava. Slava, glory, forever. That's the latest meaning. But initially, using my system of the building blocks, syllables, building blocks as syllables, we see that Slava means with, la, what did I say? That's male organ, something that brings joy, brings new creation. And va, if la, that's male, va is female. Female counterpart, so it's yin yang, with yin yang. In other words, with harmony, okay? And eventually, when languages started separating, the Tower of Babel, that proverbial Tower of Babel, and English language occurred at some point, English language preserved, believe it or not, and not just English language, many languages, all of them in fact on the planet, preserved these traces, these echoes. So the word love, love in English, look at this, even though it's spelled L-O-V-E, we pronounce it as love. Lava, Slav, love, right? Remember I said that vowels A, O, U, or U, or A, O, U sounds, they're interchangeable. It doesn't matter what vowel you have. In Serb language, they actually omit vowels all the time. For example, Serb, what we know as Serb or Serbian, is pronounced in Serb language as Srb. Where's your vowel? Do we understand what they just said? Yeah, we know. They said Serb, right? They just, and in Russian it's Serb. In English it sounds as Serb, and they will call themselves Srb. No vowel. Everybody said the same thing, right? So E, O, A, O, U, these are all easily interchangeable. Okay, so here's your story of the Slavs. So Slav, people who live in harmony. Eventually Slava became glory, became something that is beautiful and forever. Because yes, that's your reproduction. That's in fact, you're perpetuating your species. That's you actually spreading and growing, but not just physically. It actually meant a lot more. It meant spiritual growth. It meant remembering your roots, being yourself, being part of your tribe. Yeah, consciousness. It also meant perpetuating the knowledge, all that together. So the word has become one of the beloved words of all time, Slava. And of course, Slav is somebody who is part of that. So what we today call Slavs, these are Slavic languages, Slavic territories. You're seeing the map right now. They, in fact, occupy quite a large territory. The population is not that large and has decreased dramatically because there has been a concentrated attack, let's just say, against the Slavs for especially the past 2-3 centuries, because specifically in Slavic languages to different degrees, but especially in Russian language, the truth code is kept for our real origins, and the dark forces don't want that. To different degrees, different Slavic languages lost it. Some adopted the Western alphabet, Latin alphabet, which I will mention later. It is a spin-off, in fact, of the Russian alphabet. However improbable it may sound for most people, but that's what it is. There are many proofs of that, and we'll discuss all this in future webinars as well. Now I want to recap. So one more time. Orion is where the seeding of this last human civilization came from. Midgard, Gaia, in other words, Earth, Земля in Russian, Terra, Tierra in Italian and Spanish, etc. And please translate it into your own language. In various languages of Slavic origin, Земля would be understood. It would sound very similar. Now, race or rasa, we determined that it's Ra and then Ace or Asa. So Asia comes from that. Ace, which is the master, the very advanced professional, very advanced being, somebody with knowledge, somebody who is a master. Ra, light, sun, Aryans, we discussed that. And so that's Ra is reversed to become R. And these are people who work the land, who live on the land, who are happy and who live in harmony and who actively, proactively work with the land. That's what it meant. These are all higher dimensional meanings, original meanings, true meanings that were screwed up later by you know who. We're not going to mention them again. So the words Rus or Rus in Russian then became Россия, which is spreading out, okay, but also being one, being the master, ace of Ra, right? So rasa, see that? Rasa, race, and then Россия, right? Race, Россия, same word. That's what race really means, what rasa really means. It doesn't mean the color of skin at all. It does not refer to your inferior or superior race. It meant basically Russians, if you will. And I want to mention another interesting little thing here. You all know Oz, who is our moderator today. Hi, Oz.
Hey, everybody.
I hope they can hear you. And as I said, Us, Ace, Asia, and now Oz, right? And Oz happens to be also the first letter of the ancient Russian alphabet. What we today know in Russian as A, because Z was dropped in the end. And what we know in other languages, as in English, it would be A, in Spanish or Italian, again, A. In other Western languages, same thing, A or A. And initially it was Oz. Oz, same as us or ace, okay? So the first letter in the alphabet, in that original mother alphabet of all, was Oz, which means master, right? And that's where the word ace came from, an Asia or Asia. Okay, here's another link to that original, and that's Russian alphabet Oz. And now remember Asgard. Again, we're going back to Thor. See, these echoes, they exist everywhere. German language, Nordic languages, Nordic myths, such as Scandinavian myths about Thor and about Odin, they contain these traces too, where some people, see, we divided that knowledge. Pieces of knowledge were preserved in Europe, in Western Europe. Some was preserved in the British Isles by the Celts. Some was preserved in the Nordic cultures. Some was preserved in India, then Mesopotamia, Egypt, Italy. A lot of it was preserved inside Mother Russia, was hidden, was so hidden, they tried to extinguish it. Some is preserved in Serbia. There's no more Etruria. Etruscans are gone as a nation, as that beautiful conglomeration of that beautiful culture that existed, flourishing, amazing culture. But very small traces of it are left in the Balkans. And that's Slovenia, that's the part of the remnant, I would say, of Etruria, where some of those people retreated. So Slovenians probably can be regarded, and others, other Balkans people like Croatians and Bosnians and Serbs and Macedonians and such. You know, it is such a shame. I feel so terrible that these people have fought and still have so much animosity between each other, because they are one people. They're all Southern Slavs. They should make up and live in peace and prosper. That's what I'm wishing them. So all this is preserved. How interesting this is. Just imagine how everything is interconnected, how we all are connected. It's truly amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's fascinating.
You remember, incidentally, I discussed in our Scandinavian Slavs what Asgard means. Basically it means I guard. That's what Oz is. That's the first letter of the alphabet, which also means master, also means I in ancient Russian. In ancient Russian, they did not use ya, which is today's way of saying me. It's I. Well, incidentally, I am, right? I am, I in English. It's ya. It's Russian ya. Do you see that? Ya. I mean, it sounds about the same, right? Well, obviously, they don't have the sound for a ya to say that kind of as two letters, and one letter in Russian, two letters in any Western language to transcribe Russian ya. So it became I. Interesting, right? So Asgard means I guard, but it had the ancient Russian meaning of guard. Look at this, Midgard, Gaia. Guard means a place, realm. It's a realm. And also Russian word grad. Grad means city. Today we say город. We can say grad, like Stalingrad, Volgograd, right? Leningrad. That's your city right there. City of, a city on Volga, city of Stalin, city of Lenin, that sort of thing, okay? So guard is, remember how we said Ra and R, you just flip it. Same here, guard, grad, yeah? You flip the two sounds inside and you get guard instead of grad, or grad instead of guard. That's what it means. You know, everything is traced back, like just like this, like a clockwork. It's like, I could give you these millions and millions of examples. We could be talking about it for days, non-stop. This word, that word, how they're all related. And we will still return to this amazing linguistic litmus test, which is so telling. It is truth hidden in plain sight in the Russian language and in other languages as well. We are all carriers of the same knowledge. It's just that, just like in the Lord of the Rings, remember, rings were forged and then divided amongst different tribes, different species. So each would hold a specific type of knowledge. And Tolkien was not shabby. He knew what he was saying. He was a Vedic. He was a true Vedic. He didn't know he was a Vedic. He didn't know that word probably, but he knew about Russia. Remember I mentioned the White City? How it's like a typical Russian city right there. It's like ancient Novgorod right there. And he knew about this divided knowledge. So you take a piece here for safekeeping, because it became too dangerous to keep that knowledge together. Dark forces were attacking from all directions. You could call it dark forces, you could call it bad karma, because humans were in fact generating these dark forces, that bad karma for themselves, by becoming more and more egoic, becoming more and more fear and greed based. And as they were descending in consciousness, of course dark forces would come in and swarm in, because they're invited by the negative emotions that humans were displaying. They were being invited into this world. So knowledge, the wise one had to divide it amongst the tribes. So one tribe takes this, another tribe takes that, just like those rings of power that were forged in the Lord of the Rings. They symbolized something. So what I'm saying, they symbolized knowledge. They symbolize the truth, knowledge, true power. Knowledge is power, right? In Russian, there is a saying, knowledge is power. And that's what it is. Exactly that. That's where we're at. So what do we need to do now? We will be discussing it in future webinars, but I'm going to give you a hint. We have these pieces, bits and pieces of knowledge, and now we need to bring them back together. Now is the time to reconcile all the rings of power, all these pieces of knowledge. So those of us, those who are lowly calibrated humans, unfortunately, who proudly say, oh, everything descended from my Nordic culture, like my Nordic language is 5 million years old. And who are you? You're some Russian. I heard that somebody wrote to me like this, that kind of comment after one of my articles about our Scandinavian Slavs. Most people take it actually very well and really want to know the truth. Some might be very prideful of their Hindu Vedas. They're also only piece of the knowledge. Others might be very proud, and that's again egoic, that egotistical, fear-based or pride-based ego talking here of some other heritage they have. And who are you? You're a nobody. In reality, Russian culture was maligned. Everything was rewritten. History was rewritten. Truth was rewritten. Everything was turned upside down. And this is what the story is. And I'm telling you all this not to say that let's put Russians on the pedestal, Russian culture or language on the pedestal. Not at all. I'm telling you all this so we actually review it, so we remember who we really are, what our common true roots are. It doesn't matter if Levashov is correct and some of us are part of the seeding of Gaia from the Orion, and others come into Gaia as a result of the galactic wars or not, whether this theory is correct or not. I actually can calibrate this for you, and I can tell you the truth of this theory is 410. That's very good. That's why I, in fact, am bringing it up to you. So if that happened, that was also predetermined based on the cosmic plan, divine plan. So that different cultures, galactic different cultures, could mix together and form something new and create a new 3D/5D world in which different cultures that were not mixed before could mix and work together for betterment of everybody, the entire universe. That's actually very beautiful, in my opinion. This is why we actually must work together.
Yes, it was highlighted in science fiction as well, like Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. That's the premise.
Yes, absolutely. Is the premise, and in their own ways, as I already told you, different guides and teachers to humanity will tell you these things. If they are from light, if they operate based on higher consciousness, you will hear a resonance to what I told you today. Whether it's Gene Roddenberry, who was one of the humanities guides, who is one of the way showers to humanity, a major one. He also was an earth shifter. Obviously, with the amount, with the kind of work, with that level of work that he did, with that kind of 5D consciousness that he instilled in his works, he is definitely one of the earth shifters to humanity. Actually, he himself is, I'm going to tell you what level soul Gene Roddenberry is, or was rather. A level 7. He's from 7th dimension. That's very good. Very rare, let's just say. Okay, and so that's the end of this episode. It was a little longer, a little more involved, but I think that's very interesting.